Okay, now let's take a look at the context of production. So far, we have been deciding whether Westmoreland was lying or not based on the information provided in the sources and the content comparison. Now, the case is that to get the maximum marks in these type of questions, you need to consider the context of production, who produced the source, when it was produced, and for what reasons it was produced. In this case, we have the first source, which is Westmoreland speaking. We can see that the source provides us basic information about origin and purpose. It says that the source E is from General Westmoreland, that is, the author of the source, who wrote the source, in his autobiography. That is the purpose of the source. For what reasons it was written? Because this type of source, since it is an autobiography, is going to be telling us that Westmoreland, when he wrote it, had wanted to write about his life. And usually in an autobiography, people tend to be a little bit biased and try to show themselves as heroes or offer a romantic view of their own history. And the source was published in 1876. So the year is very important in this case because it's really close to the end of the Vietnam War. And then we have source F. Source F says that it is from a book called The Tragedy and Lessons of Vietnam, written by McNamara, published in 1995. So the author of the source is Robert McNamara, and we know that Robert McNamara was the US Secretary of Defense and a leading member of the American government until 1968 when he resigned because of Vietnam. This is information that it is provided by the source, and it is very helpful to understand who is the author. Then we know that the source was published in 1995, many years after the Vietnam War. So we can consider that this source is a secondary source. Although McNamara is not strictly a historian, he clearly counts with a lot of more information after the events took place and his own experience. Finally, the title of the book says The Tragedy and Lessons of Vietnam, which give you a hint about the purpose of this source, which could be making a balanced view and a balanced revision of what happened in Vietnam. What were the tragic aspects of the experience and also what were the lessons learned in terms of foreign affairs. Therefore, if we consider the information provided in source F, can we say that Westmoreland was wrong in source E? Well, taking into account all this information about who was Westmoreland, when did he write this text, this autobiography, and who was McNamara, and what did he write in 1895, then we can understand and say firmly that in fact Westmoreland was wrong because Westmoreland was stating a view about the USA being capable of winning the war. But this, what he was saying, was in 1976, very close to the end of the Vietnam War, which means that the USA and the military men did not even have all the information about all the events that took place in the war that came afterwards on knowledge of the negotiations and the capacity of the Viet Cong to fight and also the capacity of the USA to fight and the different alliances and support that the Viet Cong received from other countries and the other bordering countries. Besides, Robert McNamara was a member of the government at that moment. So it's not only about what General Westmoreland is saying, but also what McNamara, as Secretary of Defense, knew about the capacity of the American army to fight. That sometimes generals might be thinking that is larger than what the government actually knows and considers. So in this case, clearly Westmoreland was wrong. And to support this, what we have is both the information given by source F, but also the context of production by source F, because McNamara by 1995 has more information and has been able to make a more balanced view and understanding of what happened in the Vietnam War. So finally for you I have prepared this mashup chart of the key ideas that you need to consider for answering this type of questions. On one hand, you have the content, so you need to take a look. Okay, source A, B, C, whatever, and then source B. Are they similar? Are they different? I need to identify specific quotes that show me the difference and the similarity. Then I consider the origin, then I consider the purpose. And so I have to explain whether the source is wrong or not, considering which historical details do I know or do you know about the origin of the sources in relation to the period of production that help you to decide if the source is lying or is wrong. And then what about the purpose? Which historical events have taken place or are about to take place in relation to the period of production that help you decide if the purpose of the author can be biased or not? Finally, you have the mark scheme, and this is very important. This is the original mark scheme of the paper. So I want you to consider this. If you only analyze the source in terms of content, so you say that the source is lying or wrong based on the information provided and nothing else, then you will never achieve more than half the marks, 4 to 5 marks from a total of 8. And that is because you are going to only consider the content. You see, it says compares sources for difference and agreements or agreements to say whether source F proves that source E is wrong. However, to move up to the level of 8 marks, you need to compare the sources in terms of content and evaluate them in terms of context. That is to consider both the origin of production and the purpose to decide whether one source must be more reliable than the other and therefore prove that the other one is wrong or lying. So now it's your turn. Work in pairs and try to write the answer to this question.